My name's Hawk, and I make interesting things. At least I think they're interesting. I tend to make stuff that's pop culture related. I do costuming, cosplays, props, weird art stuff. It's what we're doing this time is weird art stuff. If your suggested videos happen to bring you here, well, welcome. Maybe think about subscribing. If you're a if you're a returning viewer, you should definitely think about subscribing. But today we're going to do an art project. A couple days ago, I cast a couple buckles. We're going to put them in a frame. I'm going to show you how I do it. I have a pretty specific style when it comes to certain things. I'll explain while we go. I picked up an inexpensive picture frame from, or not picture frame, shadow box from Goodwill. It's the kind that stands or hangs. It's very neat. It's small. I didn't want a large form factor for what I was doing. And this is the fabric I used for the Harlock pants. I'm trying to figure out whether I want to iron it or not. I probably do, but we'll get there. Or I could just find another section that's not as badly worn. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. The stand comes off, which I think is pretty neat. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out a small chunk of the fabric. Since it's a Harlock thing, I wanted to go as close to the costume as possible. This is probably not going to show up, but this will. Alright, before I go any farther, I'm going to go iron this. I'll be right back. So the first thing I did is cut out a swatch of fabric. It's the same fabric the pants are, Harlock's pants are made out of. Since I'm doing belt buckles, I wanted it to look, I don't know, pant-like, I guess. And I am just going to hot glue it to the frame. It's not going to be load bearing, so I don't really have to worry about excess weight pulling it weird ways. Just glue it in place. It's also going to be under another bit of the frame, so I don't really have to worry about just about anything at this point. Alright, I got a little excess here. Just going to trim it off. The blue just acts as a background for the buckles themselves, because the buckles are really going to be the highlight of this piece. Alright, let me bring you in and show you what I got. Or show you what we're going to be doing. Or at least a little bit. So this is kind of what we're doing. The whole thing's going to go together like that. We're going to add a couple of snaps, or the Chicago screws on either side. We're going to set everything up. It's going to look really nice, I hope. First thing I'm going to do is cut the side straps for the large buckle. Well, I guess the first thing I need to do is make sure everything's where I want it to be. And I want these to be relatively centered, because I want them about this distance apart. It's going to measure the overall size, which is 5 inches, which puts the very bottom of this buckle at the center. And before I get too far, make sure everything's still visible. And that's just barely, and that's exactly where I want it. So this is just over 2 inches from the edge. This is just scrap leather. That's about the right color and about the right thickness. None of this is exact. Nothing I do is really exact. My modeling might be, but that's as close as I get to spot on. That's what I'm looking for. Everything else is really the seat of my pants. I am just barely tapering it, the straps inward, because I don't want to see a lot of leather hanging out. So if I taper the edges in, everything's going to fit in nice and neat. And the goal is to simulate a belt on a pair of pants. I guess in the end, that's just what we're doing. And since this is the only time I'm going to get to adjust everything, we're going to adjust everything. And this is pretty much exactly what I've got going on for my Harlock costume. I really want to just emulate Harlock. In the end, that's what it all is, right? Just me doing a thing. Reminds me of a dude I saw in the 70s. I need a piece of lumber. I feel like this is going to be a chaotic one. Just because it's art. I may have done a dumb thing. The hanging clip is here, which puts it this way. Luckily, this is getting covered with a belt, so I'm not terribly worried about it. But pay attention to which way your frame is hanging. If push comes to shove and I have to redo it, I can just put another piece of fabric on. It's not the end of the world. Now I have to reline everything back up. So I suppose if that's the worst of it, I really need to consider myself lucky. The hard part at this point is just trying to make sure everything is neatly lined up. Since I've already drilled these holes, I now have to carefully re-drill these because I can't just pull the bolt out and drill through that because it's leather and it's going to stretch weird. Fabric doesn't like being drilled through, but once it's through, it's fine. I am not terribly worried about what the back looks like, so I've got that going for me. But I do want to make sure everything is neat and level and it looks right. Fortunately, this leather curves a little bit, so who knows? I could punch a hole. But what it looks like under the belt doesn't matter, because that I'm very happy with. Step one's done. Second thing is the exact same thing, right? Let's see how it looks under the frame. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy with that. Look at that. That looks fantastic. All right, let's do the next one. The next one's pretty much the same thing, except these, the hemispheres, get glued onto the bolts. So I need to cut this belt almost in half. I may just actually cut it in half and only use part of it, just because, you know, that saves me a little bit of leather. I haven't made that decision yet, because the belt is 1 3/4 and I want it about 1 inch. So cutting it in half should do exactly what I want. We're going to find out. So to cut it in half, I'm just folding it in half, putting 2 marks on the end, and then I'm going to use a utility knife to cut it straight across. I don't want to measure, don't want to mark, don't want to do anything. I don't want to think. The more I think, the easier it is for me to mess something up. If I'm just lining up 2 marks and cutting a line, it's way easier. Goodness knows if left to my own devices. And just like before, drill 2 holes. Except these have to be centered on these. These have to be centered. The holes have to be centered on the hemispheres. And since I'm drilling through leather and the fabric, I may be able to just not worry as much about messing up the fabric. And I know if I am a little off, it's not a big deal, because I can, you know, place the 2 globes here wherever I want. This is a quick one, by the way. This video shouldn't be more than a couple of minutes, I'm hoping, because the project itself is super easy. Most of the things I do are pretty quick, pretty easy. Filming adds a little bit of time, not too terribly much, but just a little bit. Most everything I do is repetitive. So I'm going to glue down the belt buckles real quick. I'm getting tired of tripping over them. Art shouldn't be that difficult. Find things we like, we put up things we like, and there's, you know, there's the art. That's it. Shouldn't be too much thought in it. I like that. Why? I don't know. Because I do. After because I do, nothing else really matters. I could have easily done the whole thing in resin and painted. I didn't have to brass cast these. But the person this is going to is a fellow Harlock fan. So I kind of wanted to, you know, honor that a little bit. More than I would, you know, if I were making it, hey, can you make this thing for me? It's going to have less meaning for me than someone who shares the same passions I do. Must have been the early 80s. I, laying in a pillow fort watching Channel 11. For us, that's public television, was Channel 11. At least in the Chicagoland area. That's awesome. I am so happy with that. So I'm watching there, and on comes this cartoon. I must have been 7 or 8, somewhere around there. And it was this dude with a patch and a saber, gun, and everything he said was in subtitles. That was the first time I came across anime that was subtitled. It was fascinating to me. This is just JB Weld glue. I highly, highly recommend it. If you're fusing metal to metal, this stuff is amazing. That's what we're going to use. Doesn't take a lot. So there's this guy just speaking in Japanese. And it was unlike anything I'd ever seen, anything I'd ever heard. I'm going to take a couple of minutes and round over these edges. I'll be right back. Oh, glue going. And it's under a thing. It's just going to be fine. It's fine. And he had this big ship. It's a big spaceship, right? And in the spaceship, the back looked like a boat, and it had these cannons that fired, and to 9-year-old Hawk, that was amazing. It left such an imprint on me. I would stay up constantly watching that. Between that and Doctor Who, it influenced me way more than I let it on that it did. It was a weird time for me. This was just a weird time. So, because of that, I'm a huge Harlock fan. Here we are, almost done. I'd say we're 99% done. At this point, we need to let glue dry. That's that Simone Yetch phrase she's super known for, let glue dry. But I am unbelievably happy with this. That turned out fantastic. I absolutely love how that looks. It's a subtle thing. It's a conversation starter, and oh my goodness, does it look good. So there's a couple interesting design choices here. I want to talk about a couple of them for a minute. I originally was going to have it a little wider and have like the cloak hanging down on either side, so it was black on top and red underneath, and you kind of saw it. This is the frame I found, so this is what I'm going with. It's a subtle piece. It's not supposed to be big pieces of art for me. I like little small snippets of the world just put into places. Harlock's buckles, right? Or Buckaroo's overthruster. Just small little things that go, hey, the people who know. They're like, that's very nice. I like that. Art doesn't have to be over the top. It doesn't have to be this huge painting to be nice. Bill Medina makes these little tiny paintings. I have one in my bookshelf that's Cursor from Automan. It was such a random thing. I'm like, I know what that is, and I love that show. And it was a little thing that I have limited wall space, so I have to be real selective on what I put up and where I put it up. And putting something like this up, it's small, it's subtle, it's something that I put a lot of heart and soul into, and I hope the person who gets it enjoys it as much as I do. But it just, I liked the on the inside of the frame. Let me make sure you're in frame so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to bring us both down just a little bit. Like I said, I could have easily done the entire thing in resin and then just painted it, and it would look fine. But nothing shines like metal. And this, I wanted, it'll patina, it'll weather, it'll age, and it'll look fantastic. I use bolts all the way through, so I don't have to worry about anything falling off, because it's all bolted in place. The inner frame, I went with a color that was the same color as the outside of the wood part for the Arcadia. And I brought in the nice red on top because that's what I found, and I'm very glad it looked like that. The blue of his pants for his buckles. Originally I was going to make it larger. I was going to have belt loops, and I was going to add stitching because I like stitching. Stitching in an art project kind of makes it a little more authentic to me. But I really like the fact that there's a shadow line under the shadow line, and then there's that final layer that's... I'm just rambling about art. I like art. I like design. It's kind of one of the things I go to. If it's something that interests you, perhaps thinking about liking and subscribing, because I do stuff like this often. I try to throw a video out once a week, usually on Mondays. I've been getting into shorts lately. I'll probably do those on Fridays. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll play it by ear. But again, if this is something that you're into, if you're into weird art or costumes or props, hope I see you next week.